All right, here we are at the end of session A, and I think this is my last class with you. So I just wanted to say up front, it's really been an honor, and I think over the past like 3 semesters, you've also helped connect me to a few different people, or at the very least, broaden my practical searching as far as like looking at Mesa Chamber and uh, Gilbert, and I had never really considered city government and project management. So that's been a blast. So I was thinking about doing just the typical like 3 points, but there's really 2 points that I want to reflect on. But before that, I would love to summarize the initial project for you. So in case you're just diving right in, you'll have some context. So it was to create a video, PowerPoint, or document that describes the risk management process of self-run sole proprietorship businesses. Um, Now that is in reference to the brand that I'm developing called Uncomfy Theology, and the quick idea behind that is that, whoops, is that if we can change the conversation, we can change culture. So change the conversation, change culture. Um, we the theological implication behind that is in the West, the Western church, the Western evangelical church, has grown really close to these very comfortable verses that don't tend to challenge certain lifestyles or certain aspects of just certain things that don't get talked about, like judgment and prophecy and things along those lines. It's funny how all these things make it into my school assignments. So I actually wanted to talk about two things, and that's the personal professional balance, and then the risk entrepreneurship relationship. The risk entrepreneurship relationship. So I wanted to start by describing the process that really launched the brand. My wife and I were honeymooning last May. We were in North Carolina. It has a lot of Jesus influence, a lot of churches over there. And one of the shops was this bookstore. We come out of the bookstore as a Christian bookstore, and we we were just sort of making fun of the shirts a little bit by that point. And what was going on was we were looking at what was happening to the shirts, and we were looking at it, like one another like, man, why don't we ever see shirts like "Lo, I come with my recompense"? Some of the more difficult verses to talk about. So some of those things. So I was like, oh, okay, some kind of like uncomfortable theology. And she was like, that's it, uncomfy theology. So I proceeded to look at what the process would be like to sell something online. Now I chose drop shipping, and that just means that I don't keep any material. Like I don't have a ton of mugs, like at my house. That means that I outsource. I create a design. I upload the design to a place that has products. Those products then go to another application, and that website becomes the storefront. So it's really like there's 3 places that I go to. One to create designs, one to upload the designs onto a certain product, and then bring those products onto a storefront. So here's the thing. It reduces some of the hassle on my end, but here's where the risk comes in. And this is why this is just such a perfect process to talk about and to flesh this out, is because if I kept those here, so say I ordered 100 mugs, and those mugs would get here, say that was like a $300 investment. If that was a $300 investment, it could be 6 months before I get rid of 100 mugs. So there's sort of like this aspect of uncertainty and ambiguity. And that was one of the things I wanted to highlight as far as it relates to risk and entrepreneurship. Because it has been a very entrepreneurial venture. It has been sort of like the whole brand is the idea of pushing the status quo and pushing people outside of their comfort zones. And part of that ends up being the sort of idea, I think it came up in Module 3 actually, identifying product innovation. Or maybe I'm jumbling that around a little bit. But it continually, I remember in the discussion board, it was just people talking about like the status quo, the status quo. And it's like whenever you're innovating something, whenever you're pushing the status quo, you sort of have that bell curve of people who adopt it. There's the early comers, and that's about 20%. There's the late comers, and then there's the majority of people, and that ranges anywhere between 60 and 80%, to the best of my knowledge. And it's this really nice even distribution. But what I'm doing is so niche that I needed to really validate some of those design ideas, because we were uploading designs to shirts and mugs and even like candles around Christmas time and stuff like that. So there was a great opportunity in the risk, but sourcing those mugs and bringing them here to our tiny little apartment was just too much of a, almost like a mental hassle. It's like space in your house takes up like emotional space almost. And I could dip into a little bit of personal and professional there, but I'll hold off on that and maybe we'll just weave it in. But the process that I used as far as like the funds and finances was I was like, okay, I'm going to launch this. I'm going to design the website. I'm going to design like a handful. I'm going to validate like 10 to 12 designs with some of my friends, really close friends. So it wasn't an extensive pool of people. So there was still risk in not doing more front work on that. But I wanted to get it up before the Christmas season. So there's a time crunch. This was like October of last year. And so I I look at Shopify and among a few other things, and I chose Shopify as a storefront because it had a 3-month free trial. And so I could have 3 months of using Shopify for $1, and that would give me essentially a built-in time frame to validate those design ideas and validate the brand itself. And then after that, I would have to pay. So we're now in the paying portion, which, you know, I'm gonna pause on that. So that would give me a few months to validate those ideas, and then Shopify, and so I use Printify to find the products, and then I use Canva to make the designs, and then Canva was the only one with a monthly recurring fee. Now Canva was, I think we've accrued like $60 to $80 in charges from Canva. And so we've done like 1 or 2 orders over breaking even after the Christmas season. So really it's only like 100, 150 in profits. At the same time, we haven't really reached out to a ton of people either. So we're still almost in the idea brand validation process. But the thing I want to highlight is the whole the system of self-proprietorship and the avenues that are available to the young venture capitalist and college student to do something like that has its own, I guess you might call it systemic risk, where it's a risk built into the system. So it's like that Shopify 3-month trial for $1 and then you pay afterwards. It's like, okay, well, you have three months to almost like validate an idea if you didn't already do that up front. You have 3 months to validate it in practice before you begin accruing financial risk. And that's where you get into the return versus return on investment for some of those things. I didn't expect this to be a 10-minute video at all. So I'll just quickly touch on the personal, professional part of it. Some of the risk for sole proprietorship really comes from, it's actually, it's almost systemic in that way too. Because as a startup or as a sole proprietor, you're taking ownership of an idea. There's no organization or idea or cause in the whole world that hasn't been dreamed up in the imagination of someone. And so anytime there's a sole proprietor of an idea, you really have this tension of almost like dissemination of ownership that comes with it. And so, although I might be doing all the legwork, I'm also clearing everything with my wife as far as financial decisions and things like that. I will cut this video off here. I didn't know that I could talk this long about this already. So, thank you. Thank you for this semester. Thank you for your time. Yeah, and thanks for taking on this honors project. All right.